So what we're talking about is revenue recognition. We're just giving you a precursor. I'm going to give you just a very brief idea of two cases to establish the point why a external coordinator needed to actually put a foot and say, no, this is not how it should be. So what Ramalinga Raju and his company started doing, his two sons, when they started needing more money to get into the real estate sector, he took money by pledging Satyam shares in the market and taking a lot of money. That money got invested in the properties, because the idea was the property market is never going to go bust. And then what happened? Satyam, the subprime crisis hit, and it had a spillover effect in India. In fact, it did not have that kind of a huge impact in India, frankly, the way it ruined US completely. Now that is a time when generally what happens, I buy a property, that property is worth, let's say 3 crores. But then by the time, and I don't have the money, so I take it on loan. But by the time I have to repay the loan or the EMIs, the property prices are going up. It's becoming 8 crores, 9 crores. So at any point of time, taking loan and then paying for the property isn't a bad idea. That was the idea before the subprime crisis. But suddenly, what happened? The prices went down. And all of those properties that was now there is actually worthless. Now the people who gave loan to the pledging of those shares, they started asking for their money back, and they did not have money to pay them. So what these guys started doing, the creditors, now they had the collateral, right? And the collateral was the shares of the company, which is Satyam. They started selling the Satyam shares. Now that is a bad news, because every time when Satyam shares get sold in the market, the share price would come down. Now Satyam got really crazy. They didn't want to show that the share prices are coming down. So what they did, they started fudging their accounts. They started booking false revenues. Now, when they book false revenues, understand what is happening in the books. You are just showing sales, but you have to show some party to whom you have sold. So initially they started fudging their account, showing that there are parties, because see, they have to keep their share prices up in the market, right? Nobody should get an idea that the share prices are tanking. So they started inflating their accounts. They started showing sales. So initially, when the sales were there, they started showing it as debtors to sales, right? Obviously, right? But then when these debtors, they started cooking debtors. And then they realized that no, debtors somehow will not work, because when the auditors would come and they would start asking for something called debtors confirmation, we will not be able to get it. I don't know what setting they had with whichever bank they were talking about. Then they started showing it as bank to debtors. So essentially what has happened in your books is that your PL is showing false sales and your balance sheet is showing false bank. Now this is something which is amazing, because first of all, it's very difficult to fudge back. And second of all, PwC's auditors, I really fail to understand how they could not get up, because bank is the first thing that we do whenever we're doing the audit, right? So they had dummy bank, they had dummy sales, they had dummy debtors. So everything was fudged, right? Now, things did not reach a stage when Raju could hide it. So what they wanted to do was, they wanted to actually, that all of this, the land dealings that was happening, all of this land deal, none of them happened through Satyam's accounts, okay? Because they didn't want to touch Satyam's account. So what they did, there was another company called Mitas, which is Satyam said opposite, which was founded by two of his sons. Okay, that was not Raju, but his Raju sons, and they had formed a company, Mitas, and they had done all the land dealings there, and all of the money had flown from Satyam. So what they tried to do was, that was a last attempt that Raju wanted to do to keep everything under the cover. He wanted to acquire Mitas. Okay, so on paper, what would happen? On paper, what would happen is that all of this property would come in his hand, or the shares, they wanted to show a book entry saying that I am acquiring Mitas and I'm paying money to Mitas, because they had to get rid of all of this bank, which is inflated, because it was like a ticking time bomb. So they just wanted to show this, so that on paper, they will show that they've acquired Mitas and they have transferred the money to Mitas. And that is where what happened. There was a shareholders meeting. When you do, we don't have corporate law in that much detail in US, but in India, when you do corporate law, you will see that every time you need to take a decision on whether a company wants to diversify. It's a decision that cannot be taken by the BOD. It's a decision that can be taken only with the shareholders' perspective. And that's where the shareholders came in and put their foot down. They said, we are an IT company. Why do you want to burn money by getting into real estate, something in which we don't even have a core expertise? And the market is tanking. In the last bit, when Raju failed, he understood that he cannot hide this anymore. Probably there must have been something between PwC and the bank and the company. And then Raju wrote an open letter saying that, I'm sorry, this is what we have done, and there is no way by which I can roll it back. So in the nutshell, the source is always a reason, and we don't want to show that we're doing bad, or probably we don't want to. So, there was also a recent case that happened with a Japanese company, okay, a Japanese car manufacturing company. And this is what I want you guys to do. Please go and research which is a Japanese car company I'm talking about. And then they realized that in Japan, the motive behind window dressing was very different. It was that the company is doing bad, and the people who were running the company, they felt that they were so royal to the company and so loyal that they didn't want to go and tell to the shareholders that we're doing wrong. That means that the company is failing. They didn't want to do that. And then they fudged their accounts, right? So see, the window dressing is not the main reason. The main reason is you've done something wrong, which you don't want to share to the external people. And now you want to fudge your accounts to hide something that you were doing wrong. Nobody wants to fudge accounts, guys. Remember, there's always a reason. The reason is we don't want to come out and open after we've done something wrong. Now, this was Satyam's case. And what happened after the Satyam case? Indian government passed laws. SEBI passed an order that if any promoter is going to pledge shares, if it is more than a particular threshold, then you have to intimate SEBI about what were the shares and whom have you pledged them for. Because they realized that, Satyam's shares, which had a lot of value to the company, suddenly became worthless. So that was one thing that happened. Now, Enron, again, Enron is a very interesting case if you guys have time, because you should read what Enron did. What Enron said, Toshiba, Enron, this Japanese company that I'm talking about, the big car giant. Find out about what they did, okay? And you will see every time when it is Japan, the reasons are extremely different from what people, it's not greed, it's not that you want to usurp the money. It's something else, right? Now, I'm just giving you a gist of what Enron did. You know what Enron did? Now, when Enron came into the market of energy, right, they realized that energy fields and the digging up of energy and finding out where the oil reserves and the natural gas reserves are is the most time-consuming part. Because what you're going to do is you're going to go and start digging, and you need money. And when you dig, probably you'll spend 100 crores and you did not file an oil reserve, right? So what they did, they actually broke down energy into saleable units. And that is genius, right? Because what they did was, let's say there are 5 companies, okay? These are small companies, okay? And this is where Enron is coming into the market. So initially when they started, there's a genius mind who can do such things, guys, okay? It's just that a genius mind gone, greedy is a crazy mind. And especially when you deal with very complicated financial products, you can create a havoc in the industry, okay? So there's this genius mind, what he thought was, why don't we do something, okay? So we are into energy. And what he wanted to do was, he wanted to get into energy futures. That was something which was very pre the age. Probably he was really ahead of his age at that point of time. What he started doing was, these small companies, so at one point of time, there are companies, small companies who want to get into these oil reserves kind of a thing. And once they hit a jackpot, then they will have a lot of energy source, maybe natural gas or an oil field. And on the other hand, there were all of these industry users who wanted all of this energy, right? So what they did was, they broke down energy into units which could be sold. And what they said was, so I will fund you, okay? I will try to arrange funding for you. When you discover the oil field, those oil fields will belong to Enron. So I'm going to fund you for your research of the energy fields. And when you discover your energy field, then those units will belong to Enron, that he did with the providers at one. And then with the users, what he did was, why don't you give me money today? When you give me money today, I will invest it in the development of oil fields. And tomorrow, when you have that energy developed, you will have the sole right to that energy. Can you understand what a mastermind it is? You are just acting as a middleman. Okay, what you have done is there is a need and there is need on both the sides. There's need of money on one side and there's a need of energy on the other side. So what you've done, you've gone to the industry and you've told them, why don't you give me money? I will invest that money. And tomorrow when you get an energy field, that will be yours and only yours. So you will never have a problem with the energy usage. And to the users, you went and said, I'm going to give you money. But then when that money will boil down to energy, that money comes to me. Now, this looks like a great idea. But you know what this guy started doing? This guy actually started booking revenue in his book even before any of these oil fields. So he found a lot of shell companies, found a lot of small companies, and every company was doing strange things. And he started, ultimately, when you go to consolidation, which is a concept that we are going to read later, there is a method of consolidation in which you will see that if you're holding, if your shareholding is between 0, this is 50% and this is, let's say, 20%, right? So according to US and Indian law, if you hold more than 50% of any company shares, that company becomes your company. Basically, it becomes a part of your group and you've got to consolidate. On the contrary, if your shareholding is between 20 to 50%, basically we say that, see, guy, we have a significant influence in you because I'm having more than 20% of your shares. Okay. So when you do consolidation, you will understand that, okay, give me one simple answer. Abhishek, let's say you invest in HLL, which is a company that you love to invest in. If I tell you money is not a problem, which is a company you would love to invest in? Abhishek, yeah, Abhishek? Any company that you would...
Which is a company which I would love to invest in. Any listed company in India, right? HLL.
Yeah, HLL, okay.
Yeah,
so let's say
Unilever.
if HLL makes a huge amount of money, okay, will you start recognizing revenue on HLL's account? I'm holding 2% share in HLL or 0.00002% in HLL. So when HLL earns money, I will earn money. Do you do that ever?
No.
When do you book revenue in your books?
When I probably sell it off.
Or when you receive dividend, yes or no?
Or yeah.
When HLL gives me dividend, I record it as revenue. Or when HLL, let's say, when I sell the HLL shares, I devise a profit and that is my P&L hit, right? But you will realize that if there's a huge company, and let's say that company investing in HLL, and he has more than 20% of the shares of HLL, then we don't wait for HLL to distribute the money to you in form of dividends. The moment HLL generates 100 crores as profit, I will take 20% of that profit and book it in my credit. Okay. Have you understood? So what happens when you are having equity method of investment? This is called this method of booking revenue proportionately. We're not going to do it today. We're going to do it later when you're doing consolidation. But just to give you how they misused this equity method of investment, they made shell companies. All of those companies they held more than 20% of the investment. And every time in this future revenue, which nobody has seen right now, is coming, they're booking a revenue. So they are booking pre-revenue, even when revenue was not earned. Everything is going in thin air. No energy field is being discovered, but they are booking revenue. Okay. And then things went out of proportion and there was a time in Enron. So, of course, there was a false play. But you will see that not we, people who've done a lot of research in companies, we have realized that in 99% of the fraud that has ever happened, the main reason of the fraud or the main way by which the fraud has been hid is by inflating the revenue. You have either done what? You have pre-booked revenue the way Enron did. You have inflated your revenue. Instead of showing it $100, you're showing it as $1,000. Okay. You have, so basically, there was no standard that came and told you this is the time when you should be booking revenue. This is the time when you can say that this is the amount of revenue you have earned. And since there was a lot of ambiguity or lack of clarity, what happened or what was happening was people, see, always remember that fudging of accounts is not the ultimate reason. The ultimate reason is something else. They've gone ahead and they've done something wrong. And now they didn't want to come clean. And in order to hide everything, they start window dressing their accounts. And one of the biggest areas where the window dressing happens is revenue. Now, in the light of all, see, Enron was a huge shock to the US economy. Why? Because a lot of people, normal people like you and me, suddenly became bankrupt. Okay. And everybody was blaming the government. And there, public has a lot of power, you know. Arthur Anderson, imagine in India, Satyam happened. PwC is still there. Nothing happened to PwC, right? For a few years, it had to leave audit of certain companies, but nothing impacted them. But in the US, when Arthur Anderson, one of the auditors the auditor who was with Enron, that auditor had to file for bankruptcy. They did not allow that auditor to exist. So suddenly, out of these big fives or big six, we have one less, which is like a giant going off, right? And then US government wanted to, bring in a lot of stuff. The stock came into being. The entire concept of independent directors came into being. The audit, as such, the discipline was questioned. So in today, when you are doing audit, you will see that they have not trusted the accounting discipline to take care of public money. They have created their own board. They call it the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. And I think that's a genius. Okay. And India, also there are talks, but there's a lot of problem there. Okay. So if you have time and if you feel you're interested enough, there are some excellent case studies on how people have fudged their accounts. The WorldCom, the Enron, this is the subprime crisis, then we have the subprime crisis hitting it. Toshiba, then we had this Nissan, or what was this Japanese giant who did this. In India, we have cases like the Xerox. Xerox was found fudging their accounts big time at some point of time. Okay, there are some excellent case studies. You have time to understand the backdrop which gave rise to the revenue recognition standard.